Good evening, and welcome to the February 3rd, 2010 meeting of the Lake Forest Building Review Board. Let us begin by introducing the members of the board. I'm Don Schoenheider from the 3rd Ward. Will the other members of the board please introduce themselves, starting to my left?
Maddie Dugan, 3rd Ward.
I'm Stuart Trey from the 2nd Ward.
Lloyd Culbertson, 4th Ward.
Monica Ruggles, 1st Ward.
Charlie King, 2nd Ward.
Thank you. And would staff please introduce themselves?
Peter Kutat.
Megan O'Neill.
Thank you. The board is here tonight to work together with all of you, property owners, architects, neighbors, and interested citizens, to continue the long tradition that allows the community members to work together to preserve the qualities and the unique character that make Lake Forest a special community. We recognize the personal importance of each petitioner's request, and our goal is to respect the requests of the owner while balancing the interests of the community as a whole, to preserve, complement, and enhance its architectural character and heritage. For those of you who may not be familiar with the Building Review Board, excuse me, the types of projects that come before this board are those in which the property owners are requesting a variance to allow a home that's larger than permitted by code, are seeking a demolition permit for a replacement structure, or otherwise involve issues that could not be fully resolved with city staff. It's important to note that over 95% of building permits are issued by the city without any need for board review. Thus, excuse me, the board typically deals with the most challenging and sometimes controversial projects. The City of Lake Forest is committed to conducting open and fair meetings. To achieve that goal, the board has adopted meeting procedures so that all parties will be provided an opportunity to speak. These procedures are outlined in the agendas available at the back of the room. This meeting is also broadcast on cable television. Speaking on behalf of the entire board and city staff, our objective is to provide a review process that is thorough, fair, and without unnecessary delay. The next order of business is the approval of the minutes for the December 2nd, 2009 meeting. Any comments or corrections to those minutes? Okay, hearing none, I will ask for an approval for those minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the minutes of the December meeting be approved as written.
Thank you, and do I have a second?
A second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unopposed? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. The first petition this evening is for the Settlers Green project. And before we get started, I'm going to go off agenda just a bit and make a couple of comments. Settlers Green is a project that involves a variety of different city bodies. The Building Review Board is just one of those bodies. The purview of our board and the purpose of the meeting this evening is pretty narrow. Our responsibility tonight is really fourfold. It's to review the architectural design of the project and the proposed structures that we'll see this evening. To look at the proposed materials that would be a part of the project, to review the overall site plan, how it works, and to also look at the landscape plan. Those are the only items tonight that the board will consider and will review. Issues such as traffic, drainage, ownership and maintenance, tenant selection criteria, any of those items are not under our purview, and they will not be part of the discussion this evening. I will tell you that the Plan Commission is scheduled to continue further discussion and debate on the project on March 10. Some of those items will probably be included in their meeting. I would encourage you to look for public notice of that meeting in the future as well. We also want to ensure that the petitioner tonight, again, keeps your comments and your remarks to kind of within the confines of our discussion points, as well as public testimony. I'm curious if I could just very quickly see a show of hands. How many people are here this evening and plan on speaking when the opportunity is given relating to this project? Could I see a show of hands? Anyone? 1, 2.
So you're talking about the first project?
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. And again, so I would ask anyone who does to confine their comments to those 4 particular items. We'll give everyone a chance who wants to speak. We do have other agenda items this evening, so we'll move through, and hopefully we can continue to give everyone a chance to have an opportunity to say what they want to say and hear a complete presentation as well. Okay, thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is a request for approval of townhomes and landscaping for Settlers Green, an affordable residential development proposed for the northwest corner of Telegraph and Everett Roads. Property owner is the City of Lake Forest. Developers are Mary Ellen Tamasey on behalf of Lake County Residential Development Corporation, Bill DeBrewer on behalf of the DeBrewer Company, and I believe the petitioner tonight will be Diane Melikar. Diane?
Good evening. Thank you, Chairman and members of the staff and members of the board. My name is Mary Ellen Tamasey, and I'm the Executive Director of Lake County Affordable Housing Corporation. Just very briefly, we're very pleased this evening to be before you to present our development to you. Both the DeBrewer Company and LCRDC have over 30 years of experience in developing housing in Lake County, mainly in mixed housing, both for sale, rental, market rate, as well as affordable. I'm excited that we have a wonderful design team that we've been working with, who are here with us this evening to do the presentation and present it all to you. I'm going to introduce Diana Melikar from Melikar Architects, and then right after her it will be Tim Ball from Rocco Fiore and Sons Landscape Architects. Thank you.
Good evening. While we're trying to get our presentation up here, I'm not sure whether you'd like to go and see the model at all, but we have a site model on the front there for you to review. Okay, good. We can have the first slide, Jen. Thank you. Other way. Good. At Settlers Green, our design is driven by the site context and its relationship to its surroundings. It is important that we respect the properties adjacent to our site, minimize how our development impacts the overall neighborhood, and harmonize with the nearby architecture. This image shows the neighborhood context. Our site is outlined here in red. Here. Surrounding our parcel, there's a commercial development along Waukegan Road. Here. The metro station adjacent to the property to the east, Arbor Ridge subdivision to the south, and Westlake subdivision to the west. There's also a city-owned wooded buffer zone to the west, right here, and a detention pond to the north that will not be developed at all. By being nestled in between commercial and residential districts, our small multifamily residential project provides a suitable transition both in building use and building scale. As you will see in the next images, there are presently substantially landscaped areas around the site that also support a residential character and use of the site, and they're located right along this perimeter here. Thank you. These are images of our site view from the street. The image on the left shows the existing Everett Road streetscape looking at our site to the northwest. The image on the right is the existing Telegraph Road streetscape. The existing site is well screened with vegetation. We intend to maintain the existing streetscape and augment the vegetation with suitable new plantings where necessary. Here is our proposed site plan. Everett Road is indicated on the bottom of the image. Telegraph Road is on the right side of the image. The proposed homes are shown in light yellow. The program requirements for the proposed residences are modest, ranging in size between 1,150 square feet and 1,450 square feet of living space per unit, plus the garages. Therefore, the units lend themselves well to combine into 8 duplex buildings. These smaller homes can be grouped together, utilizing their front building facades to form an outdoor room here of contained community green space. The center open green space, bordered by roadway, is considerable in size, measuring about 90 feet by 90 feet, or about 1/5 of an acre. With the inclusion of the front yards, the open green space, including the roads, driveways, and front sidewalks, is an extra 100 feet in each direction, measuring approximately 190 feet by 190 feet, from front facade to front facade of the homes. This extra yard visually expands the landscaped park-like setting to 8/10 of an acre. The remainder of the landscape around the site, such as proposed backyards and city land to the west and north, is densely landscaped as buffered areas. You can see from this image that green space is the dominant element in our land plan and design approach. Similar to Market Square, the road, right here, defines a passive park area in the center and forms the structure of the land plan. The building locations and compositions correlate directly to that central park. The homes reinforce the land geometry to define the edge of the outdoor green square. This one. Here's a color-coded diagram of our unit mix. The proposed property plan has a total of 8 two-family residential homes. The buildings are comprised of 7 two-bedroom units indicated in yellow and 9 three-bedroom units indicated in green, including 1 handicapped accessible unit of each type. When designing the Settlers Green site plan and buildings, we researched the immediate neighborhood context and other Lake Forest precedents for building scale, building ensembles, architectural details, and materials selections. Neighboring homes in the Lakewood and Arbor Ridge subdivisions are comprised of a mixture of traditional architectural styles built with a variety of materials. The building typology changes from the commercial strip mall in the Waukegan Road business area to non-commercial uses west of the Metro tracks. The adjacent train station and fire station transition to a building type that is more sympathetic to the adjacent residential neighborhoods. They are traditional in architectural style, predominantly built of brick and masonry, and exhibit traditional sloping roofs. Our proposed multifamily housing further transitions to the adjacent residential neighborhoods in building use, scale, massing, and detailing. Looking at Lake Forest precedents for this type of housing, we reviewed Meadowood Farm. Meadowood Farm is a good example of a cohesive, well-developed grouping of smaller scale homes that transition to residential neighborhoods with larger homes. These Tudor-style cottage homes encircle a common green area and work together as an ensemble. Their unique village-like setting does not adversely impact neighboring properties. Quite the opposite, they enhance the surrounding neighborhood and nestle well within the landscape. Here are additional examples of smaller scale homes in neighborhood settings. These homes are predominantly 1.5-story building masses, and roof shapes are simply organized, frequently using dormers. Our proposed building designs at Settlers Green similarly utilize the gable ends and 1-story eave lines. These additional precedents are in close proximity to a central park setting near another central business district in Lake Forest. They employ raking roof shapes and an architectural style, scale, and proportion that we found valuable to our design strategy. The architectural aesthetic that we selected for Settlers Green homes is traditional English arts and crafts. The designs include double gable groupings at the center of the buildings and raking roofs that taper to the building ends, as you can see here. Dormers provide scale to the roof planes. Entry loggias are set within triple grouped brick arch or timber wood openings. I don't have my glasses here, but there should be 3 openings on each one of these in the center. Windows are vertically proportioned casements. Entry doors and garage doors are detailed. Materials are earth-toned in color, reflecting the home's garden-like setting and cottage appearance. This is a model photo, and of course the model's in front of you. It is important to maintain architectural stylistic integrity throughout the Settlers Green site. The homes work together as an ensemble. Consistent design patterns and architectural style are essential to create a cohesive development. However, as you can see in the image here, each building is unique due to variations of the design style. All proposed building facades are consistently English arts and crafts in proportion, ornamentation, building shape and form, and fenestration. Here is an example of the two-bedroom building with hip on gable massing. And you can see the hips here on this gable end. Roofs and dormers are also hipped. Fenestration is informally symmetrical. The horizontal lines formed by the hip roof ends on the front facade are repeated in this loggia down below. By comparison, the two-bedroom gable elevations shown here have shed dormers. So you got these peak here with its sheds. And arched brick loggias that reflect the more animated front facade building massing. This image shows a site section looking northward. On the right is Telegraph Road and Settlers Green homes colored here. On the left is the nearest existing residence on Lakewood Drive. Landscape buffer is between them, right here. Our proposed homes are 1.5 stories high with 8-foot interior ceilings and 26-foot ridge heights at their centers, sloping down to 8 feet above grade at the garage doors. This low-scale treatment at the building ends results in a comfortable and appropriate spacing between homes. The facades present a pleasing rhythm along the streetscape. The English arts and crafts style is consistent to each home. However, subtle variations of roof shapes, entry loggias, and material colors offer variety within the established design pattern. Without breaking the overall order on the site, this architectural treatment supports a sense of community within the site, as each building individually contributes to a complete site composition. Is that my timer? Oh my goodness, I guess I'm so used to the plan.
That's
I'm
your
sorry,
timer.
I'm used to the plan commission. I have 3 more slides.
We'll give you a couple more minutes, Diana.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I've got a lot to cover here. The 3 images shown here are representative of the brick color selections we intend to use for the Settlers Green homes. We also have samples down here in the front at the barister rail. The proposed homes will be constructed of high-quality materials for beauty, durability, and longevity. Walls shall be slightly textured brick with highly saturated colors. Mortars will be colored to blend with the brick and hand-wiped to give the walls a mottled effect. Window heads shall be soldier coarse brick and sills will be cut limestone. Windows shall be simulated divided light aluminum clad wood in a color that coordinates with the brick and mortar selections. Entry doors and garage doors will be arts and crafts in style and a natural color to match the homes. This model image shows a proposed red brick residence with wood timber style loggia and corresponding roof color. Roofing materials shall be architectural style laminated fiberglass shingles. Where wood is exposed at dormers and fascias, the species shall be smooth sawn paid in cedar. Roof gutters and downspouts will be pre-finished aluminum in a color that coordinates with the trim. Roof rakes and overhangs will be consistent with the English arts and crafts style. They will be detailed utilizing clean profiles and tight margins. And this concludes my architectural portion. Can we keep on going with the landscape, or?
We
have 2 slides for the landscape.
That's great.
Okay.
We'll do landscape as well.
Good evening. I'm Tim Ball with Rocco Fiore and Sons. I'll do a speed presentation. As Diana mentioned earlier, the green space is important to the project. As you saw in an earlier slide, pretty much a green square donut. Large green perimeter with the existing plantings along Everett and Telegraph, and then the existing vegetation along the west side and the north side as well. We're going to do everything we can to enhance that. Where there are weaknesses, we're going to build it up as much as possible. At a minimum, we're always going to comply with ordinance and provide that standard. Given our presence in the community, we want to see this project be successful. To do that, we think more than the ordinance will be necessary. How much more, we'll work with staff to make sure that we achieve that standard. Tree preservation is also important. We've had a tree survey performed and understand what is there, what will be impacted, and how that math will work out. Be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Could we go to staff now and ask for input? Peter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For my comments, I'd like to touch on a couple of the items and just reiterate a few of the things that you have already said, and then briefly highlight a couple of the technical reviews that have been done to date. The public review process for this project began with the January 13th Plan Commission meeting. At that meeting, the Commission heard a presentation from the petitioner on the overall development proposal, heard public comment, and then identified issues and asked questions of the petitioner and identified areas where additional information may be necessary. Petitioners are now working on responding to those questions and preparing that information, and at this point is scheduled to return to the Plan Commission at their March 10th meeting. Once the Plan Commission concludes their review, their recommendation would be forwarded on to the City Council, which at this point is just tentatively scheduled for the April City Council meeting. As you mentioned, the role of the Building Review Board really is very limited in its scope. You're looking at the architectural design of the buildings, the details on the exterior, the types of materials that are proposed, the overall site design and landscape design as it's currently proposed. The staff report does include a few recommended conditions of approval, and I would be happy to review those probably later on in the meeting if you'd like me to. At this point, the development has gone through a preliminary staff review. It has been determined to be technically feasible. This development does comply with all zoning requirements, and in this case, it's the zoning requirements that determine the maximum building that's allowed, size that's allowed on this site. This is a piece of property that's in the B1 zoning district. That zoning district permits both commercial and residential uses. Maximum building size in that zoning district is determined by building setbacks, building height, maximum coverage of buildings on the site, and then parking ratios. And in this case, this development does comply with each of those requirements. The minimum setback is exceeded. The buildings on the site are set back 45 to 50 feet from Telegraph Road sides and the Everett Road side of the property. The maximum building height is 35 feet. The structures as they're currently designed approximately 26 feet in height. The maximum coverage of buildings on the lot is not permitted to exceed 30% of the lot size. In this case, the maximum coverage of buildings is 17%, and the parking requirement is met as well. It exceeds the 1.5 spaces required per unit. The city engineer has reviewed the preliminary site grading and engineering plans. City engineer has found that, again, the technical aspects of the engineering are feasible. In this case, all of stormwater that occurs on this site will be captured on the site, will be directed northward towards the existing detention pond, will be captured and then directed eastward towards the north branch of the Chicago River. So that concludes my comments. As I said, the staff report does include several recommended conditions of approval, and I'd be happy to review those when appropriate.
Thank you, Peter, very much. At this point, I'd like to ask the members of the board if they have specific questions for the petitioner relating to the presentation or any comments that Peter may have just made. Maddie?
Yes. I love your comments on the color palettes that you've chosen for the buildings and the roofing material. You're your model is in the sort of a fall palette, and things just seemed a little monochromatic, and I was wondering if you could comment on that.
Well, you can see the brick samples that are in the front there. We selected one that was in the red tones, one that was in the gold and yellow tones, and then one that's in the brown tones. We were trying to find colors that were, I call them saturated, but they're colors that are stronger colors that are reflective of the English arts and crafts style. And so when we showed the examples on the slides there, we were showing some examples that you could see around town, like at some of the buildings at the college as an example. But there's a famous English house called the Red House as an example, or Edwin Lutyens used a lot of those colors that had that were more reflective of that style of architecture. So what we didn't want to do is come up with sort of a hybrid where, you know, the brick color doesn't match with the style of the architecture.
Right, and the roof color will be different?
The roof color, well, you know, unfortunately, the models, we can only get so many different colors, and the same thing with the, you know, with the pictures here.
Right.
We have a myriad of colors for architectural shingles, and we still have to look that over and select those.
Okay, thank you.
Before we begin, Diana, how heavy is that? Could that be brought up so the board members could see that?
The model?
Is that all right?
Yeah,
Guy,
I can't
could we
do it,
ask
but
you to?
thank you, Guy.
Thank you. I think it's helpful for the board to see that. Charlie? Well, you've seen, this side's already seen it. You have other specific questions for the petitioner?
I guess one question I have is two of the buildings, kind of the focal points as you enter off of Telegraph and Everett. The facade is a rear facade, and it's rather large massing there, pointing out towards these ingress and egress points, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of relief. I don't know if you've thought about that at all, or, you know, they're very interesting buildings besides that.
Are you talking about
yeah, I'm
this
talking
one
about there,
and this
and then,
one?
yes, exactly. Any thoughts on that?
Well, actually, those buildings are smaller than the ones on the opposite side over here. So we've got the 2-bedroom units over here as opposed to the 3 bedrooms. We were trying to get as much space away from Everett and Telegraph Roads as we could, so we were working with the smaller building units. But I think that you'd find those buildings really aren't, they're not very large. So, and with the berming there, they're really kind of nestled into the landscape, and that was our concept. So I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. Did I answer it, or what,
I just think those are the facades that kind of pop out at me as I look at this, and
yeah, it might
again, they're right at some pretty prominent parts of the property, and it'd be helpful if there's maybe a little more relief there. You have some other features on other parts of the buildings, whether it be columns, et cetera, and just something I picked up on.
Okay. I think that may be the bird's eye view as well, because you have to remember that this is all landscaped. So really what you're looking at is you're looking more, when you drive in on this side and on this side, you're going to see the park here. And of course, on the sides here, you have the roofs with dormers. So you've got things that are, you know, punctuating it and adding relief. But for the most part, when you're going to be driving in, my pointer's not working. When you're driving in here, and you can only make a right turn in here and go out this way, you're going to be viewing this house on this angle, and then eventually you're going to come around to here. So I just, even though this is a beautiful facade, I don't think that you're really going to see that from the street. Right now, it's heavily landscaped, and it's going to be even more landscaped. So our focal point really here was the interior. You know, you might ask, well, why didn't we face these buildings out towards the street, except that the whole Everett Road streetscape is really landscaped, and so with the berms here, it made a lot more sense to make this more of an inwardly focused development.
So
Monica?
questions. First of all, if I could just start with the site plan. I noticed in the packet that it did say that you were conforming to the parking regulations and you actually had 2 to 3 spots. Could you tell me where those spaces would be?
Absolutely. Jen, can you turn to some of the floor plans? We have some floor plans in the appendix. I mean, I could keep on talking forever, so. If we go to the, these are the smaller units. There's a 1-car garage on each. This is a unit, and this is a unit. There's a 1-car garage on each of these, and then, of course, there's 2 parking spaces. I'll show you in the site plan in a minute. And then when you get to the 3-bedroom units, they actually have 2-car garages buried inside of the buildings already. And then if we go to the site plan, sorry, takes a bit here. Each one of these are 2 parking spaces for each one of the shared units. And then, of course, they have driveway parking just like you or I would have in our regular single-family home outside of there. So they actually have 1 or 2 enclosed parking spaces, and then they have outdoor parking spaces for guests and visitors.
So, the parking spaces, if a guest would come, they'd park in that little, the back out area of the driveway?
Yeah, there's right here, because you can back out here and drive out, but there's 2 parking spaces here in each one of these little pods.
And then, like, if there's service vehicles or anything like that, they're going to park in the interior street?
Then, well, they might pull up to your driveway, and you mean like the UPS man or somebody like that? They might pull up to the side of the road here, but we haven't provided parking along that street because we're trying to keep this space really feeling park-like. So they may pull up to the side of the street, or they can certainly pull into the driveway.
Okay. And, can I continue?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I was wondering if you were trying to pursue any of the sustainable kind of neighborhood guidelines that are present in the architectural community today, and if so, what parts of your project do you consider to be sustainable?
Sure, absolutely. We found that there's a green homes checklist that the city of Chicago uses for residential work. You may be familiar with that. And so we're following a lot of those guidelines. We decided against actually going through the LEED certification process because we felt as though that was a lot of paperwork and extra certification that we can incorporate those LEED items into the design. So, of course, it's things like energy efficiency and materials that are, from within 500 miles, all the sort of the typical things that you would have in LEED certification, but we're just not doing the extra paperwork. So.
And I didn't see any fencing on the site plans. Do you foresee that you're going to have any kind of fencing? I kind of go back to Charlie's comment about the entries where you can see the backside of a couple of the residences, and the one in particular, when you come in off of Everett, I could see from the site plan that the berming actually flattens out once you get close to the entry. So it seems like you would really see the backside of Unit 8 or whatever quite prominently.
Yeah, I think if we go to the landscape plan, you can see it better, and maybe, Tim, you might address that a little bit, because we did have discussions back and forth about fencing, and maybe Bill can answer that too. It's not as much my purview.
Yeah, I mean, is this the unit you're talking about right in this area?
Yes.
I mean, it is our intention not to just plant with trees, but an undergrowth as well. So there's a full layer of plantings that really you're not going to be seeing through. We're going to be using evergreen quite a bit because really it's the year-round interest that the evergreens provide, like the junipers that are there now, the taller spruce and in particular the Norway spruce. Some of the Austrian pine are struggling, but we're going to be replacing those. So we're going to find ways to soften that view because we don't want that as being our front door either.
Correct.
The landscape's going to be key in solving that challenge.
Thank you.
Stuart?
Yes, I have a question on your roof line. On both the 2 and 3 bedroom units, you've got the 2 gables, and I appreciate that. And then you've got an interconnecting gable, and then both in the front and rear, you've got this 3-sided funnel. that comes down to one gutter? And have you considered ice damming? I happen to live in a house that's I won't say it, it's a terrible house. But anyway,
We can
it
help you with
happens
that.
in this climate, and to me, that's a formula for an awful ice damming problem in every one of those things.
I'm not sure what the age of your home is, but we've done this detail before, and we've done it successfully. It's
In this
really,
climate?
Yes. Oh, I mean, here in Lake Forest.
Ah,
It's really a matter of making sure that we do the architectural detailing right, that we provide the proper specifications, and that it's built correctly. So we provide a really detailed set of drawings, and we follow through with that as well. So all I
so
can
you're
say,
confident that
I am confident.
it'll handle the snow?
Otherwise, I wouldn't want to put my name on it, so,
Thank you.
thank you.
Lloyd?
Hi, Diana. Maybe you could help me out a little bit. I'm a bit confused by the terminology arts and crafts. I have some reference material I looked at regarding that style, and I see elements like low-pitched roofs and wide eave overhangs, the absence of horizontal muttons on the windows, smooth wall surfaces.
Yeah, maybe I could clarify it really
Please.
quickly for you.
Yeah.
You're talking about the American arts and crafts style as opposed to the English arts and crafts style. The English arts and crafts style really evolved out of almost well, it's arts and crafts, and it's from that period, but it evolves sort of out of the Tudor. So you see more of the higher sloped roofs, the vertical emphasis for the windows. So it's something that came out of a craft period movement, if you're going to be specific to the style. But what we were trying to do is when we looked at the neighborhood in the area, we saw a fair amount of sloped roofs. We were responding to a variety of traditional styles in the immediate, the adjacent neighborhoods. But we felt as though this particular style was good for not only duplex homes, but also for something that's really durable and will last a long time and not require a lot of maintenance. So those are all things that we were considering when we selected the style.
I acknowledge the simplicity of the massing and the proportion on the buildings in this project. But I also note that the elevations seem rather spare to me. There's not much detail, ornamentation, seems very plain in appearance. The models help a little bit, and some of these color renderings help a little bit, but I'm wondering if you'd talk to that point. Is it part of the arts and
Jen,
crafts style
Jen, maybe
as
you can go to
as
those.
you define it?
Yeah,
And-
maybe you can go to some of those images, that one in particular. That's an example of a few of those English arts and crafts styles. It really has to do with wall surfaces and the actual massing, very strong building massings. And the moment you start using that double gable grouping or the double gable with the hip, it's a very strong building mass. So rather than referring to ornamentation that you're kind of dialing up the outside walls, instead we're looking at the integrity of the building materials and the groupings of the windows. Another example would be like Ragdale. Ragdale is sort of, that's the same kind of style. And if you look at that house, it's very simple. So I guess we were trying to find something that would be buildable and beautiful at the same time. And obviously it's affordable housing, so we're in the situation where we're not building the $5 million mansion.
So the modesty of design is consistent with
Yes.
the purpose.
Yeah, yeah.
What are on the description of exterior materials, you talk about concrete pavers. Do you have any example of that? I'm not sure what a concrete paver. This is for terraces and patios.
Oh, for the landscaping.
Right.
Sure.
Modular paving systems, whether it be concrete or antique pavers, there's a number of things to choose from. Pavers that have been salvaged, talking about sustainable materials not being recreated but using older materials. All of those are possibilities with this. We really haven't gone to the final design stages of that, but that's kind of the intent. Does that answer your question?
I suppose, yeah. Concrete pavers was checked in the list here. So.
Of course they're gonna be beautiful.
None of the structures have chimneys?
Pardon me?
There are no chimneys on any of the structures?
No.
Are there
No fireplaces.
No fireplaces?
No.
Okay.
We're trying to be very energy efficient, you know. Chimneys, you might as well just open up the house and let the air out, you know.
That's all for now.
Ben, I had a couple of questions, if I may. I think I heard you say that the maximum ridge height is 20 feet 6 inches, and I think I heard
No,
Peter say-
26
Okay,
feet.
thank you,
Yeah.
because I heard 26 from Peter as well.
No, it's
so I-
26 feet, yeah.
Okay, great. What are the sizes of the garages in terms of dimension?
Sure. They're about 20 feet by 20 feet, so they're a,
Standard, they looked a
Yeah.
bit small on the.
oh, well, these are one car.
I-
these
I
are one-car
understand, but
garages.
even the two-car looked tight, so I was curious if they were standard or if they'd been shrunk down a bit. I think a little bit to Charlie's point, and maybe a bit to Lloyd's as well, what is the detailing around the windows really look like? Are there concrete sills, or is there anything there? I don't think I see
Oh, well,
that.
it's hard for, it's hard maybe for you to see it, but on the top up here, we have where the bricks are standing on the vertical.
Okay,
Okay, and then each one of these down here is a limestone sill.
okay.
So,
So
and then, of
there
course,
is-
we have brick arches here, and this is brick as well, so it's, the decorations and the ornamentation's really using the wall material.
Again, just trying to make sure we're focusing on the details.
Mm-hmm, sure.
Is there or will there be any signage in this project?
Oh, we
Directional
haven't-
signage?
We haven't gotten that far.
Okay.
Well, if you look at the site plan, you know, there's only one way, there's a right turn in. Okay. There's a right turn in here, and you can go out this way, and there's also a right turn out. So I'm sure there'll be some signage here, and then this is a pork chop, you know, and that was determined really through, but otherwise we haven't gotten any further than that.
And to follow up on that, maybe it's more Tim's point, that is right turn only when you're coming south out of the project. You cannot cut
Correct.
across
Correct.
to go eastbound on Everett.
Correct. You have to go west.
All right,
When you're coming out here, you have to go this way.
okay.
The idea is that when you come in here, when you get to this point, you could either go north or south. They're trying to divert the traffic, so it's getting away from this intersection here at Everett and Telegraph.
Obviously, that was my
Yeah,
note. Maybe two questions quickly for Tim. We talked about the berm along Everett. Can you give us a sense of kind of the height of that berm? What you anticipate that berm in terms of height might be? Again, I think we're just looking for some scale.
Yeah, the berm that's there now, that's planted now, we're intending to keep that planting unless the plant is in bad shape. Some of the Austrian pines along the east side are struggling. But changing the height, we're not intending to do anything with that. Adding plant material to it, yes.
And we need to do anything to the stormwater detention pond to the north at all to accommodate the site, and in turn, will that necessitate any landscape addition?
The detention basin is off of our property,
Okay.
so except for construction access to that to bring the stormwater to the pond, that would be restored, but otherwise, there's no intention to do anything to it.
And
I could probably
I'm sorry.
answer a little bit
Sure.
more on that too. The stormwater detention here was actually designed for a commercial business here, so it was designed for a lot more impervious pavement. So it's,
and then I'm also assuming the downspouts would be connected underground. Is that correct? Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. We'll move on, and I will ask for the opportunity now to have the public make comments. Please, if you'd like to come up, use one of the microphones, state your name and where you live, and for 5 minutes, please.
Good evening. and thank you for the opportunity to address you. My name is Dan Jessica, and I live at 951 Lakewood Drive. I will limit my comments to areas within your purview, but the first comment I would make is I don't think there's been enough attention paid to the west side landscaping. When you look at along Everett, when you look along Telegraph, it's actually quite nicely landscaped. There's a nice berm, there's some very mature evergreen trees, so even at this time of year when you go past it, you know, it's fairly well screened. On the west side, there's really no landscaping that they're proposing. If you look at the plantings that exist there, it's mostly buckthorn. And although there is a good distance between this development and my house, it's because 250 of that 300 feet is my backyard. So my request and suggestion is that there needs to be some more attention paid, perhaps a berm similar to what they have, perhaps some mature planting of some evergreen trees, because there's really not. During the summer, there's good screening from the buckthorn, but during the winter months, there really isn't that much evergreen there. And particularly in light of the comments that some of you have made, which I share, for instance, Member King's concern that the backs of these houses are fairly, I'm not an architect, I'm not an expert, but they're fairly nondescript, they're fairly significant massing, and they're fairly flat. And it seems to me that particularly in light of that, there needs to be some better screening to the west. Again, my only other comment would be, there was a comment made that, well, maybe should these be a little more, whether ornate's the word, or just a little more detailed, and the response was, well, this is affordable housing. That concerns me. I think the response has got to be, because this is affordable housing in this community, we need to make sure that it looks like, in all respects, market rate housing. I leave that to you. You're the experts, but I am here requesting that you do pay great attention to that, and hopefully, if this project goes forward, it will be something that we can all drive by and look at out our back window and feel proudly about. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. I'm Sidney Smith. I reside at 1326 West Everett. My property would be the next mailbox on the road if you proceed west from this development. I'm approximately 250 yards directly west of this. My property is 2.8 acres. I have a house with 2,700 square feet of living space. You can see there's a marked difference in the density on my property and the density that they're proposing 250 yards away from me. Additionally, if we take a look at the elevations that they give as precedents in Lake Forest, those are all East Lake Forest. East Lake Forest was built out in the 1920s and 30s. I lived on Park Avenue, just north of the high school, in a neighborhood of cottages and Cape Cods. West Lake Forest, on the other hand, was built out in the 50s and 60s. My property was built, the house was built in 1956. It was one of the first houses built in that area. It is California Ranch, single-story stone. The houses in my neighborhood are ranches predominantly. While they cite these homes as precedents, they're residing areas like Market Square, Washington Circle, Illinois Road. They're not consistent with the architecture in the Everett Road area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Stephen Schmidt. I live in the Pine Oaks community, 1136 Pine Oaks. This is a townhome community of about 22 units on Conway, off of Conway, just before Waukegan Road. I'm also the president of that association, the Townhome Association for Pine Oaks. My concerns here are also have been already reflected in some of the earlier comments. The relative value of the properties. We're talking about the affordable housing in this particular case. I think that we already have something similar to that where Telegraph Road hits Conway, there are some homes that would be more likely considered an more affordable housing format. And in trying to keep with some of the other developments in the community, for example, ours has some more density, as townhomes will, but respective to this particular development, I was looking at the relative setbacks, and again, the or rather plain, massive elevation, and the closeness that this presents to any viewable point of view to the homes through access or ingress in, or departures, egress, ingress. My concerns also would be potentially for parking, because this is a situation that can arise in any density community, and ours inclusive. So if we have attractive housing values and we have multiple people owning cars, your one car, for example, for a 2-bedroom community would be quickly over capacity. You have 2 cars, you've got one that would be sitting on the lot directly behind the car in the garage, or it would be moved over to one of the parking areas that you have made available. I see this as a potential recipe for lots of cars everywhere in this in this community, simply because it will be attractive. People will want to live there. Let's see if I have any other comments about this. No, I think that about covers it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name's Skip Thompson. I reside on Arcady Drive, very close to this development. For clarification, I've heard it said a couple times, is the next Planning Commission meeting then been moved to the March 10? Okay.
That's right. The next time Plan Commission will address this matter will be March 10th.
As opposed to a week from tonight?
Yes.
Okay. And will that be resent out to the
Yes.
people that are on your list?
We will send out notice of that public hearing in advance of it to everyone that has received notice in the past.
Correct. Okay, thank you. I'd echo the president of Pine Oaks Association comments, and I think that that's a wonderful, if you will, blueprint for this board to possibly look at in terms of the setbacks, the berms, and, you know, I don't know why we didn't think of that before. I'm concerned about the same things on parking. I see a very small one-car garage in those particular units, no basements, storage issues, which then forces more cars out on the street. And I don't know the answer to this. We talked about the extra parking places, but is there enough space? It's hard to tell by the site plan. The length of the driveway, can a car actually sit in front of that garage door? Is the driveway at least 20 or 25 feet long to accommodate a parked car? That's something for you folks to question. The other thing is the width of these roadways, and as we said, where are those cars going to park when those garages fill up? I would expect that anybody in a one-car unit is going to struggle unless they have a Mini or a Volkswagen Bug to put a car in that garage. I would venture to guess that the average 2-car garage is going to have 1 car in it. I'm very concerned about the movement of the current walkway that many of us use to get to the train that is being eliminated. The developer is planning to relocate, if you will, a walkway which basically is nothing more than walking through the sidewalks that are proposed in that development as opposed to what exists today. Not sure that really works for most of us. The berm planned along Everett, again, a question, how, for those of us that don't understand some of this stuff, how does that relate to the height of the berm on the south side of Everett for those folks' rear yard, which would be the foot of Sir William? In other words, is it the same height? Is it going to be landscaped similarly? And As was pointed out earlier by one of the board members, you know, we're going to be looking at rear yards as we come along there. So we ought to have screening on a year-round basis, not buckthorn, similar to what the developer put in Arbor Ridge for the Sir William homes. I also see, and I don't know how you solve this, but there's going to be some cut-throughs in this neighborhood with our traffic congestion. There are going to be people that are going to be coming around the back way. I don't know why they would be doing it, but I can see people cutting through this development to not have to go through the four-way stop if they're coming from the north. Yeah, coming from the north, jumping off on Conway Road, coming around the tracks, coming down Telegraph, cutting through this development and making the right onto Everett. During that very difficult time that many of us lived through it, 7:50 to 8:05, to be exact. I appreciate the detail that everybody's talked about, both the board and the developer, around the windows, the maintenance issues. And the only thing that I missed was, and maybe you stated it, are the garage doors traditional wood doors or are they metal doors? So those are questions for you folks to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Anyone else?
Hi, thank you for having me here today, or having all of us make our comments. My name is Tim Peer. I live at 989 Lakewood Drive, directly west of the project, directly west. I'm worried about the landscaping also to the west. As Mr. Jaska mentioned, it is all buckthorn. There are a handful of deciduous trees. I think the landscaping would have to be addressed, and that would either potentially be berming, more evergreens, maybe a fence. As I look through it now in the winter, there are no leaves, and I can see the architect, okay? So unless that's changed, I think it's gonna be an eyesore for me and definitely an eyesore for Mr. Jaska. In addition, the eyesore will even be increased because of the size and the lack of any kind of detail on the back side of these buildings. Again, the loading of the buildings in the rear is quite large with no detail. I'm surprised there was not more creativity from an environmental perspective, especially in terms of how the economics will work of this, of the city giving this away. I would think the environmental standards would be higher. I'm surprised. I am worried about the modest design because the economics have to work, okay? So the design has to be modest, and how does that fit with the character of the neighborhood? I walk by the houses, the senior housing on Conway and Telegraph every day. You know what? It's isolated, but that would not really fit the character, and you're asking to look at this and ask it to fit into the character. I'm not sure it fits the character because the economics will not allow it to fit the character of the neighborhood. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peer. Anyone else? Seeing none, I would ask, got maybe a laundry list there, Diana, of things. Are you prepared to go down those and respond and answer to those?
I can respond to as many as I can remember.
I think you've probably got a list.
Sure. I can't respond to all of them because obviously a lot of them were landscaping. But I heard that there was a lack of detailing on the buildings, and I would have to say that maybe I should get some pictures, more pictures for you to see that just because the buildings have an inherent simplicity in them doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be, simple. We've used the same style on a house that just recently sold for over $5 million. The houses that you saw in those pictures there that I showed right before our examples, one of those houses I think is up for sale right now for like $550,000, somewhere between the $500,000 and $600,000 mark. I mean, these aren't going to be ugly buildings, especially, we want to make sure that they have proper detailing, and the detailing between on the rake side, and I showed it on the last slide. I mean, we've got moldings in there. I mean, it's not. I don't know how else to present it in this presentation, but they're not gonna just, they're not just simple boxes, I guess. And then in terms of parking, we've provided one space for those 2-bedroom units indoors, and then we've got 2 spaces outside as well as driveways. And on the 3-bedroom units, we've got the 2 car garages that are enclosed, and the same thing, we've got available to people plenty of outdoor parking that's not on the street. So I would really question, just like in my neighborhood, I mean, when somebody comes and visits me, they park out on the driveway or whatever. And those are standard size garages with 16-foot wide doors. On the single ones, they're 9-foot wide. So I don't see an issue with that, but I can't guarantee what happens and how people store their things in their homes or whatever. And also, I believe Mary Ellen could address that, but I believe that there's a covenant that for the renters that they wouldn't be able to park out on the street overnight. So those are all issues to try and keep the site well-maintained and looking well. So, and in terms of landscaping, I think Tim can answer some of those.
I think the primary question a couple times stated was the west border and the landscaping that is not only existing there, but then the proposed landscaping, and is it sufficient? As I mentioned in my comments, it's our intention not only to apply the code that Lake Forest has for landscaping, but to exceed that code. What we've depicted, it pretty much meets the code. If we need to exceed that code to make that situation more palatable, I think we can. One of the challenges we're faced with is Mother Nature. The west side of the property is the afternoon sun. Evergreens that we would like to use really can't be growing in that shade and doing well over a long period of time. They might look good for the first couple of years, but then they would thin out. There's also deer population that comes through these wooded areas and enjoys some of the other evergreens that will grow in the shade. So we will do everything we can and work with staff closely to try to find a solution that helps to create a better buffer in that area that we have available to us. We hear the comments and we can respond to them that way. Were there any other landscape questions? I apologize.
I heard a couple of other questions, just to confirm, wood garage doors, correct?
The materials on the doors,
Yeah.
you're saying? We're researching that right now. We want to make sure that it's an insulated garage door. So there are a lot of options out there. It may be painted or it may be of a finished wood. So, but it's not going to be, you know, a stamped aluminum type product. So.
In length of the driveways, I think was a question. Are the driveways
I would have
satisfactory
to
park a car behind the garage door and not stick out?
Oh, between the units, definitely, most definitely. You can pull
I
out.
think the question was actually behind the garage doors or in front of the garage doors.
Yeah. I wish I have a separate slide that I showed all the parking spaces for the Plan Commission, and I guess I wasn't anticipating these questions for this commission. This space here is enough where a car can back out and drive away, but then there's 2 parking spaces here that are available behind, that are, you know, free and clear of these garage doors. And of course, when people come visit, this is wide enough. This is a 2-car roadway that people could park on one side to get in and out access. So.
But those 2 parking spaces would be shared because this driveway serves 2 units.
Yes, we're trying
so they'd
to
be
cut
shared
down on
by
impervious pavement.
That's right.
Yeah.
And what about parking? If somebody entertained, you know, and so they had 5 or 6 automobiles, you know, typically in some townhouse associations, they do have guest parking, and I don't see anything for that here.
Now, I guess we're relying on, I could figure out the actual stacking that you could do on all of these driveways. They're fairly long. I haven't done that actual stacking, and I'm not sure what the covenants.
So there's no allowance for guest parking, is what you're telling me?
Well, on the driveways, just like, I mean, at my house in Whispering Oaks, I do the same thing.
You don't want them parking on the street in that circle or anything?
We'd prefer if they didn't, but
But
I mean,
isn't this gonna
what
happen?
we're trying to do is avoid long-term parking on the
Oh,
street.
yeah, this is an entertaining evening or something like that, but it,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, Mary Ellen mentioned that there's, you know, hundreds of parking spaces right across the street in the metro station too, but,
That's
but-
Metro's problem.
Yeah, yeah.
They don't like that.
Yeah.
That's not a good
But,
reason.
I mean, the idea was that there wasn't gonna be long-term parking on the street. Now, if you know, there may be a situation where they have some sort of party and they can fit in here and they can fit along the street, but that wasn't the intention of the roadway. We're trying to keep this clear so that it feels much more park-like.
There was another question, and maybe it's a question for Tim again. I think Mr. Thompson brought up the idea of a walking path or a sidewalk that's actually being removed.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain what's happening there? Are you losing that? Are you replacing with sidewalk? Can you clarify that?
Sure. Well, there was a sidewalk that went through in this area in the woods, and there's been a lot of discussion back and forth whether the moment that we have homes in here, is it something that would be an attribute to have people walking on the back sides of people's homes? And also there's been discussion, and we've been addressing it, but we weren't prepared to come to this board with that. But from public safety, they were discussing whether we might include a sidewalk that goes through the development over, you know, towards the metro station over here. So what we were hoping was something more like the walkways that you see like in Market Square, where it kind of rings the perimeter of the square. And so we're planning on doing something like that, but we still have to review it with Pete, and we still have to review it with engineering, so with the city engineering.
But you are aware of that issue, and it's on the list?
Yes, and it was a discussion that we went back and forth and said, you know, is it something that is, you know, a good idea or not such a good idea to be walking in the backyards of people's homes?
I think, staff, did I miss anything? Questions? Peter, was there anything anyone else brought up that we didn't address to the petitioner?
I have a couple items that I can comment
Please.
on, and some of them you've already talked a little bit about. On the issue of the sidewalk, that is a discussion that we've had about relocating that sidewalk internal to the development. It's consistent with other development throughout the community where we encourage pedestrian links through the neighborhoods. That plan still needs to be determined exactly how that layout would work within the development and be reviewed by the engineering staff. We would expect that that will be on the plans that return to the Plan Commission. There was a question about cut-through traffic. It was something that we looked at with the traffic engineering consultant that has prepared a traffic study to look at this development in the surrounding area. The traffic consultants looked at the number of vehicles that stack at an intersection during peak hours of traffic congestion. In this case, on average, the stacking doesn't back up north as far to the point where the access is into this development off of Telegraph Road. So they don't anticipate that that would make cutting through the development a attractive option. However, if the development is constructed, that's certainly something that can be monitored. If it's an issue, we can certainly work with public safety officials to try and put some parameters in place for addressing that. And then a number of questions on the landscaping, and particularly the landscape buffer along the west side of the development. The landscape plan that you have in your packet is a preliminary plan. It's not intended to be the final plan yet. We are working with the city forester to ensure that the caliper inches of trees that need to be placed on the site is met. And there is room to enhance that landscape buffer along that side of the property with evergreen plantings and things that will provide year-round screening, both at a high level and at a lower level, so that there's a complete screening. And that's certainly something that you can include in any recommended conditions of approval, that landscaping along that perimeter edge be enhanced with a certain type of landscaping. And I guess the other thing that comes to mind with landscaping on that side is with the elimination of the sidewalk in that area, that actually would open up a space where additional landscape plantings could be provided to provide some additional screening. That's everything I have.
All right, we'll go back to the board for any other final questions you have of the petitioner, any other comments and discussion at this point. Anyone want to tackle anything? Charlie, anything for you?
I stand by my earlier comment that I am concerned about the rear facing facades, in particular the one along Telegraph and that point of egress. It's right where the train comes through. It's kind of the entrance statement to Lake Forest for people coming off that train. I am concerned. We talked about it. I have to be frank that I don't think it was addressed by the petitioner that well, because it's a double-loaded structure. It's not like some of these pictures we've seen in the community where it's just a smaller single-family home. It's double-loaded. So it concerns me, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Well, I have some comments just about the elevations and the overall arts and craft design of the development. The development in itself really does remind me of Howard Van Doren Shaw's Marktown. It's a very classic look. The arts and craft style and Lake Forest actually go hand in hand. There's many examples of arts and crafts, especially on the east side. So I think, choosing this style is appropriate, and the scale of these buildings being 1.5 stories, I think is a nice transition, coming from the commercial area and going back down to, these adjoining neighborhoods. Even though the style of many of the West Lake Forest homes are not this arts and crafts style, I think it is a good look. My concern that I have with it is that the buildings all seem to be a bit too similar to me. Like, if you would look at Shaw's Marktown, for example, he has the double gabled roof structures, but he also has just single hip roofs and some other roof forms. And maybe that would help some of our thoughts about, the simplicity of some of these structures and just the flatness of it. But I certainly, from the experience that I had, these are really beautiful buildings, and to have them have this simple elevation is truly historic to the style. All the detailing that you're showing, the eaves, the detailing around the doors and the windows is appropriate to the style and also in proportion. Some of the comments that I have, there's two of the building types that I think the one-bedroom and, I don't know, maybe it's a two-bedroom one. There's dormers on the second floor that don't lead to second-floor spaces. So part of that, I wonder about that, because you're actually, those dormers are purely then just aesthetic in their design, and I'm imagining you're doing that to, make the buildings a little bit, more, I don't know. I don't want to say better, because I actually think that they would look really nice even without those dormers on the side. So I guess I just wonder if you really need those dormers on, and I know you can look at the plan and see, but, if you're looking in second floor plan, they're just lighting up unoccupied space. And especially for affordable housing, I just wonder if you want to build something that you don't really need to have. So I guess that was pretty much most of, my thoughts. I think the choice of materials are wonderful. Brick is very sustainable, classic. The detailing with the wood and the cedar is all appropriate. The simulated divided lights are wonderful. I do have concerns with the parking. I personally have a shared driveway, and I know that just dealing with neighbors and people coming in and out, it could be problematic. Snow at the end of the driveway, where does all the snow go? I think that that could be looked at a little bit more. So, otherwise, I think it's a very nice start.
I still have some issues with the monochromatic feel that I'm getting, and maybe it's just the model, you weren't able to use all the different colors that are available in your samples that you have down there in the models and on your plans that you presented to us. But when you look through the houses that you've featured from Lake Forest, there is more color contrast from the trim to the walls to the roofing in these houses than I get a feeling from looking at the model. And now maybe I just am having trouble absorbing your actual detail, but it just looks monochromatic to me, and therefore a bigger mass of a building.
Stuart?
Yeah, my concerns are still with the parking. I would like to see more on that, and I'm not convinced it was well thought out. I could be wrong, but that's my concerns.
Lloyd?
I would agree with my colleagues on a couple of issues. Guest parking and shared parking, I think, will continue to be a problem that needs to be addressed. In building on Monica and Maddie's comments, I guess what was troubling me is Monica nailed it, that they look a little too similar, these structures, and maybe you could add interest by providing other roof forms, as Monica suggested, or deleting some of the dormers on some of the units, or more color contrast, as Maddie indicated. I think these would all add some architectural interest and excitement to the appearance of the development. So, and then finally, I believe, is it Mr. Jaska and Mr. Peart both mentioned the west side landscaping. I think this is a very important issue that needs to be addressed, either through more plantings, a berm, I heard a fence mentioned, something that helps buffer these folks from the proposed project.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let me see if I can summarize a few of the things I've heard from the board members here, and let me restate a couple if I may. I'm hearing there's concern about parking, and I think that is a valid concern. That there may not be another solution, but I think it sounds as if it may need to be looked at. I would concur with everyone else and with several of the folks that got up that I'd like to see a more fully developed landscape plan that would incorporate more development, more landscape material and buffer on the west side. I think that's a critical issue. And I'd like to understand what happens to the walking path and kind of where that goes and what, if anything, can replace it. I agree with some of the other comments that, well, I completely agree with Monica that you've got a tremendously good start. But I think it could stand some refinement. I think whoever mentioned it, maybe it was Maddie, that they do look very similar. And again, maybe it's the color palette of the model. That was one of the reasons I was glad that you did bring the brick. I like the fact that you've got more of a tan palette and then more of a red palette, so that you'll have a little bit of a variation in color. But I think when you're looking at the entire project in the model, it does look very similar. And potentially something you can do with the roof lines, something you can do with the dormers may help break that up a bit. I do, however, go back to Charlie's comment, and I'm not sure, I'm sensitive to keeping with the period and with the style. But I am in agreement with your comment about the mass of some of the bigger units and doing something to try to break those up. That's where I was going when I was asking about window trim and limestone sills and kind of what the trim looked like. I don't know if that means bigger windows, another window there, I'm not sure. But I think particularly in the unit that backs to Everett and the units that would back to the west side, I think are valid to kind of relook at and see if there is something you can do to break up that massing. I'm assuming there's street lighting in the neighborhood, comparable to city lighting. And I think I'd be very sensitive to kind of the hope that you could come up with some kind of a wooden garage door type of a style that would be in keeping with much of the neighborhood and much of the community. So, I think there may be a half dozen things or so. The landscape plan, some design modifications. Again, I think I personally really appreciate the green space. I like the feeling of a central park, a central green space. I think you're on the right track. But I think based upon some of the comments you've heard, I think maybe some tweaking and modification may help us get there. And I think without question, some of the landscape questions that we had and some of the massing and design questions, I think may warrant a little more discussion, maybe a little more thought. So, any other comments, staff? Any other comments on your behalf? Okay. I think I'm hearing. I think that we've got good progress. We're headed in the right direction. Very similar to single-family projects that we see very often. I think we've tried to give you a little bit of direction on maybe some modifications. And I think what I'm hearing is maybe we'd like to give the petitioner another round of opportunity to make some of those modifications and take a look at some of those issues, including the parking, and potentially come back again in front of the board for another meeting. Is that kind of what I'm getting from this group?
That's my feeling.
Okay, all right. Then I would ask for a motion to that effect, if I may have one. And just to clarify, I mean, I think what we're looking for is a motion to continue the petition, to allow the petitioner to make modifications and take back input from the board and area residents, and ask them to come back again to reflect with another proposal to reflect those modifications.
So,
Peter,
go ahead.
I was just going to add, that would be appropriate, and it would be appropriate to continue the item to your March 3rd meeting.
Great.
And if we can address those issues and bring it back to you on that agenda, we'll try and do that.
Great. Do I have a motion to that effect from anyone?
So moved.
I'll second. We just couldn't say it.
Any discussion or further conversation on the motion? Modifications to such? Okay, there's a motion on the table. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none. The petition is continued to the March 3rd meeting, and we look forward to seeing you back then. Thank you very much. The next item on tonight's agenda is a request for approval of the demolition of an existing residence located at 23 South Negaunee Lane. No replacement structures proposed, and the property will be an expanded yard for the house on an adjacent lot. A single zoning lot will be created. The owners are Richard Colburn, and the representative is Mr. Jim Russell with Greenview Homes. Good evening. Could I ask anyone in the room, if you're here for this meeting, please be seated. If not, we might ask you to take your conversation in the hall. Thank you very much. Mr. Russell, could I also ask you to grab the mic or stand in front of that? Thank you.
This is the proposed property here at 23 Negaunee. Both adjoining lots at 20 and 49 are owned by the Colburns. The intent of the demolition of 23 Negaunee is to increase the open landscaping, develop landscaping between the two properties. In conversations with staff, what we've talked about is, as part of this application, that there will be an intent to combine the two lots at 23 and 49 to provide for just one single-family residence. And that, so I think that's been presented as part of this. There's a letter of intent been submitted with your package to that effect as well. We also have pictures. Oops. This is the existing structure at 23, front elevation. And this is the rear of the building as well. What we are proposing to do is, again, we have provided a landscaping plan. It's kind of hard. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. Essentially, all the impervious coverage, the driveway, the home, all that'll be removed. It'll all be graded back out to flat existing levels. All the existing trees that are on the property will be maintained and protected. And then again, it will be, again, a fully landscaped single-family property, just for larger lots between the two homes, as I mentioned. I feel like this is going to go so quick compared to your last meeting. I really apologize. I'd like to drag it out, or not? Would not like to drag it out. And then here's the existing plat of survey, the two properties right here, 49 and 23. I think for the most, that's really pretty much all I have.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Staff comments on the petition?
Thank you, Chairman Schoenheider. This really isn't a typical request that the board receives. It's a demolition request with no replacement structure. In the past, the board has been supportive of such requests when the intent is to consolidate the property with an adjacent property. This is a unique situation where there are several lots in common ownership in the same area, and the homeowner has provided a letter of intent to consolidate the land and provide a landscaped area to support the home adjacent to this property. With respect to the conditions of approval, in the event that a lot is reestablished through a subdivision process, any new construction that is proposed on this property would require review by the Building Review Board for the replacement structure. Additionally, we are asking for a demolition, debris, recycle, and reuse plan. And it is also, in speaking with the petitioner, his intent to deconstruct the home and recycle as much of the property as possible. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
I have a question, Megan.
Sure.
This, the last time we did this was on the lot that, coming around, looking at the layout, it would be south of 50 South. And at that time, as I recall, is this the same owner is going to be my question. In other words, he already owns 20 and 50 and the lot to the south of that.
That's correct.
And then, so the same owner is going to do 23 and he owns 49. So he wants, so all of his land goes all the way around. The only piece that he doesn't own on that street is with the address of 250 on Windsor. Am I correct?
I'm not sure of the ownership of 250, but you are correct in that the
so
previous
this is the
request
same owner
is the same owner, and that lot was landscaped consistent with the landscaping at 50 South Negaunee.
What is the eventual long-term plan for all of these lots, where there's going to be ending up in the very end with one house, correct? And where is that going to be?
The long-term goal is to have, at some point, 23 and 49 would become the main residence for the owners. That is correct. They would be combined, those combined lots that we're talking about,
Yes.
but that would be essentially the development of that will probably take us 2 or 3 years at minimum.
And so then ultimately, the plan would be to also demolish 20 and 50?
No, ma'am. Those residences, 20 would become the main guest house. If you looked at 50, that is an entertainment home. There's a very large indoor pool that's been built up in the last couple of years on that property. And so that would be those 2 residences, those will all remain.
And what would happen to the street at that point? Would it
At
become
this
a
point,
private drive?
Nothing
or-
would happen to the street. It's the intent to maintain 49 as one larger property that would support one single house. And then 20 and 50 would also remain at this time. If there were any larger changes that involved shifting the road in any way, that would certainly need review by the appropriate board or commission.
Okay, thank you.
What else, Charlie?
I just have a question, I guess, for, maybe for city staff is, I'm not suggesting that Colburns would do this, but when you give permission to demolish something, what if they only kind of get halfway? Maybe they demolish the house, but the driveway remains, and I'm just worried about kind of an eyesore. We at least have a pretty nice looking home, quite frankly, right now. They go through half the demolition, then they decide I don't want it, or what have you, is if we give permission, not only to these guys, but on other people going forward, what safeguards do we have that they actually complete it and landscape it down the road?
Well, the demolition permit would include the demolition of the house and removal of all improvements on the property in order to make this one property. In the event that that work is not complete, the permit would not be closed. There would be potential to receive a completion bond, as well as place a lien against the property for future owners that they would have to address that if this property changed hands.
Thank you.
Monica? Anything?
I don't really have any real questions about
Okay. All right. Lloyd?
There's a wooden structure in the corner, a wooden fenced-in structure in the corner of the yard.
Yes, sir.
What is that?
That's actually a compost pile that's back in there. For all the properties, actually a walkway that goes back in there into just a large compost pile.
Would that be part of the demolition?
No, that is proposed to remain should the, board approve that, yes.
And how does that work? Everybody in the neighborhood uses it, or just the property owner?
Just the property owners, that is correct, yes, sir.
Just the 2, 49 and 23?
Well, they have all the adjoining properties as well, and so the leaves and those sort of items are all coming over there. The properties are beautifully landscaped. I mean, I would encourage you in the spring to go over there, but there's quite extensive landscaping, and they are under that, the whole organic reuse. And also part of the application, one of the big things I do want to emphasize is we talk about demolition, that we're actually talking about, we use a term in our letter of intent as deconstruction. And part of the deconstruction is we're going to actually use a company that's called the Reuse People. And essentially what they do is rather than just knock it up, grind it up, and try and use whatever they can, they actually will physically come in and hand take the property apart, everything. And essentially, I did bring the regional director, Ken Ortiz, is here if you'd like to hear about that process. But essentially, where you're looking for about 50% of a building in part of your demolition process to be reused and recycled, what they'll actually do is over 90% or approximately 90% of this building will actually be reused and never hit a dump site or recycling bin. So it's really a neat process, and we've used that several times in the North Shore, and I would encourage you to look into that, and I can present that here or at another time as well if you'd like.
There's a greenhouse structure as well, is that?
On this particular property? No, there's not, sir. On 23 Negaunee, no.
I thought I saw in the backyard there were 2. I don't know if they're portable or they're...
It's a little, I'll call it pole barn at best, where there's some plastic up there. I can throw it back up on the screen. But it's a temporary structure, and that would come down as well.
That would come down,
Yes, sir.
okay. And if I want to make sure I understand this correctly. The landscape improvement is simply to resod the areas that are demolished, the improvements that are removed.
That would be correct.
So there's no trees, no shrubbery, no,
The existing trees and shrubbery would all remain that are on your proposed plan that you have
Right.
there. I think if you would go back, Megan, some of the things that we did at the other property, again, all the properties, there's walkways going between the properties and the landscaping. Let me say this, but it's almost botanical garden type of quality, but it's with, so I think you'll see extensive versus just open, lawn being set up there.
right. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Just two things, Mr. Russell, just to piggyback on Lloyd's comment. I think, and I don't think or I'm assuming, and I'm going to speak for the board, I don't think have an issue with deferring the project because of it, but I would ask, and I think I would make a recommendation as part of the approval process that your landscape plan, when you do plantings, comes in for approval. As I think the assumption that we made when we saw this was, to Lloyd's comment, it was just going to be grass. And I think I just heard you say, well, it might be grass, but it might be something else. So, and that's okay, but I think we just want to make sure we see what we're getting, and I think I would recommend that as a condition of approval, or city staff approves the landscape plan. I applaud you, and without question applaud the Colburns for going about the demolition or the deconstruction of the house as you are. What's the timing of doing that from start to finish? Is it a lengthier process than a typical demolition?
Yes, sir. It is. A typical demolition is literally almost a one-day process, 2 days at best. And the deconstruction, I can let Ken address that more in depth, but is typically, my understanding is like probably 2 to 3 weeks. Ken?
3 weeks for that.
3 weeks for this size project.
Okay.
Correct.
So it wouldn't be a multiple month project where you have equipment on site for months at a time?
No, sir, it's
no more than 30 days?
That would be correct.
Okay, okay. Okay, that's all I had. Any comments, anyone from the public wish to comment on this petition? Okay, seeing none. I'll take it back. Any other comments or thoughts at all, Mr. Russell, from you?
None other, I guess, if I would, going back to your landscaping thing, as far as we're presenting it with open land,
Mm-hmm.
and if I misspoke on the owner's part, as far as, I'm just know their natures. She loves it, she's got a green thumb and can't stop planting, quite frankly. There's an addiction there. You know,
And I don't think any of us are arguing with it, because we've seen what's happening in this, that we just like to make sure we see what's gonna go on, so.
Fair enough, surely.
Any other final comments from staff? Megan?
I have one comment
Okay.
to the petitioner. Mr. Russell, you are involved because eventually you hope to build the new structure when it is designed and built. Is that correct?
Well, yes, sir. Will be, one is the general contractor for the demolition, which
Okay.
would be, again, using the reuse people as well as all the other water sewer disconnects, and as well as assisting with the renovation of the property as well. But yes, my
And then you would
ultimate
be
goal.
involved with the new structure when it is designed?
Yes, sir, that would be my ultimate goal, that's
Yeah,
correct.
okay. All right, okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Just by point of clarification, Mr. Russell, you've seen the recommendation from city staff. You're familiar with and agreeable to the recommendation and the points that they've listed here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Then hearing no other discussion, I would open the floor up to a motion for action on the petition.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the petition to demolish the single-family residence located at 23 South Negaunee Lane, subject to the conditions outlined in the staff recommendations, and adding to that staff approval of a final landscape plan.
Okay. Do I have a second to the motion?
Second.
Second by Stewart. Any other further discussion or comments on the motion? Any additions? Hearing none, I'll take it to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to our third item on the agenda this evening. A request for approval of replacement community sign frames at two locations, the southeast corner of Wesley Road and Western Avenue, and the southwest corner of Telegraph and Everett Roads. A request for approval of a new sign for the City of Lake Forest Recreation Center in Croya, also located on the south side of Hastings Road between the entrance drives to the Recreation Center and Croya. Owner and representative this evening, the City of Lake Forest. And I'll open the floor. Megan?
Thank you, Chairman Schoenheider. I'll be presenting this petition on behalf of the city as well as incorporating staff comments. I've placed up on the screen just a general locator map to help orient viewers at home to where we are discussing for community signage. Signage is an important issue, especially in Lake Forest. We do have a sign ordinance in place that really tries to capture the character of Lake Forest and make sure that signage is appropriate to that character. Within the sign ordinance, there is a section that calls out community signboard areas. We have 3 currently in place in Lake Forest. One is at City Hall at Oakwood and Deer Path. The other is the southeast corner of Wesley Road and Western Avenue, and the third is the southwest corner of Waukegan and Everett Roads. The latter 2 that I just said are in disrepair, and they are in need of replacement. And that really sparked a discussion about maintaining a consistent level of quality of design and signage throughout the community. That being said, there are really 2 requests that we're looking at today. One is the replacement of those 2 signs due to their condition, and the second is for a new sign located at the rec center on Hastings. With respect to the replacement sign, as I mentioned, they are in need of replacement. We're proposing that the replacement signage be modeled after the existing sign that's located at City Hall. We would present a painted wood construction 5-panel similar to that model without some of the embellishments. More of a simple frame sign with no change in the location. With respect, and the size of those signs would be the same. They would incorporate a sign 30 by 42 inches. With respect to the new sign for events at the rec center and Croya, there was really a need expressed to announce events that were happening at the rec center and Croya, and also due to the way that they manufacture their signs, to find a creative way to protect those posters from the elements. The solution that we're presenting this evening is a 3-panel sign, again, similar in construction to the community signboards, located on the east side of the westmost drive to the Recreation Center. There's a nice backdrop of evergreen trees. The signs would be placed within that landscape context, and potentially additional landscaping added in the front area. There is, if you step outside of the building that we're in today, there is a public notice board outside of City Hall that allows for documents to be displayed and protected from the elements. The sign that's being proposed at this location will be similar in construction to that, but smaller in scale to accommodate a poster 24 by 36. So the scale will be smaller, but the detailing will be similar. The third part of this report that was presented to the board is regarding progressive signs, and I just wanted to clarify that the progressive signs really aren't noted as a location for community advertising, and the point of including them in this report is really to formalize the intent of those as being a place for the school district to announce community service announcements twice a year, and no other advertising along, Deer Path and McKinley. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have or display any images on the screen if that would help your discussion.
Megan, just out of curiosity, I just want to make sure I'm clear. The new Hastings sign would be a 3-panel sign, and in addition to that, it would also have the protected notice board adjacent to it. Is that correct?
Actually, it would be a 3-panel sign constructed out of those more of the box construction, so that those 3 panels would be protected from the elements.
Got it.
And they would be smaller than what's represented in your package. This is actually an image of the Deer Path sign.
That was my next question.
So
Would it
they won't be as
smaller?
robust as what you're seeing in your packet. The proportions will be slimmer.
And how, it may have been in the packet, I'm sorry, yeah, it was 6 by 3.5, correct? Something like that. Yeah.
Which dimension are you asking?
It was, I got it, sign
Okay.
detail, 6 by 3.5.
Okay.
Close. Megan, I have a question. Are these manufactured signs, or is this a carpenter in a carpenter shop and build them, or what?
We'll have to find a carpenter or a
Okay,
company
so
to
this is
manufacture
not ABC Sign Company, and you can order these out of a catalog. This is, and the material will be wood. What kind of wood? Painted wood, but.
Painted wood, I think that we'll leave that up to the person constructing it to determine what the best to weather against the elements.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, why didn't you go with the design detail of the existing newer sign?
I think the existing sign is a little weak for those corners, and in order to draw some sort of consistency throughout the city, choosing the best of the 3, we went with the City Hall design.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understood that. I'm talking about this newer 5-panel sign that you're using as the model. It has...
why didn't we use the more embellished
Exactly.
design? I see. Sorry for misunderstanding your question. In those locations, I think it's appropriate for there to be embellishment at City Hall. This is in a different neighborhood. It's closer to pedestrians and on a slower scale. Those details may get lost at the other locations and really seemed unnecessary.
That was my question as well. I was wondering why the 2 replacement signs didn't have the same embellishment as the one at City Hall. And my thought was that, you know, the other 2 are actually at locations where you drive by, you know, so to me it seems like you could use a bigger sign that was something that was a little bit more ornate, and I guess I would have liked to have seen all 3 of them look the same.
The board can certainly have that discussion and modify the proposal as you see fit for the community.
And the one at the rec center at Hastings, so is that, it's a little hard to tell from the picture, but is it true then the only way you can really see it is if you're leaving the rec center from Hastings? I mean, what direction is it going to be facing?
The sign will be oriented, I think the exact location still needs to be determined. But it will be oriented towards Hastings so that as you approach the rec center, you will see the signs. And it'll be on a curve, so it's not a flat panel. It's actually more of an arched panel, so the 2 side ones will be visible as you approach it from either direction.
And the intent for that is to have people driving by to see it, because driving back and forth through that, I know there's kids walking around. I mean, is there any concern that drivers would be distracted while they're driving by and looking at the sign? And
we have conducted a public safety review with the police department, and they do feel that this location will not create any hazardous conditions at that location.
Thanks.
I'm just going to put up an image.
Any other board comments or questions of Megan?
I agree that I think the sign here at this corner at City Hall is very attractive, and if we're trying to promote Everett and Waukegan as a gateway into the city, in or out of the city, and the same at Wesley and McKinley, or Weston rather, I think the more embellished signs in both locations would be appropriate.
Anyone from the public wishing to make a comment?
May I make a comment?
Yes.
To Board Member Dugan's point, the original location when we were looking at the rec center was actually over in this corner on the west side of this driveway. And for those concerns of safety and visibility to the field and the kids walking around, it was actually moved to the location against the trees and pushed back where there's already a visual barrier so that it will not increase that condition.
And Megan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at one point there was also some discussion about it being on the corner of Hastings and Deer Path. And
That's
that
correct.
also may have been an issue for that as well.
That's correct.
Okay.
So this has become the preferred location
Okay.
for all parties.
Hearing no other public testimony, I'll bring it back to the staff. Any other final comments? Now that you're back in your seat. I did have one other question. Landscaping around the signage, similar, added, increased, and will the signs be the same height as the ones at Wesleyan and Everett?
The signs will be the same height and the same in the same location for the two replacement signs.
And will the landscaping
Additional
be
landscaping, I
improved?
think we can certainly look at that once they're installed to see if there's a need. I know there may be some additional landscaping installed at the rec center sign. Again, once it's installed and we see how it looks against the existing landscaping, we can evaluate that.
I mean, I think a good example of landscaping I think would be appropriate for the two new signs would be the one adjacent here to City Hall with low ground cover. Really helps offset or highlight the signs.
Certainly.
So I think that would be a great solution. Any other comments or suggestions from the board members? Any other discussion?
I'd only agree that the landscaping would enhance the signs. And I also like the City Hall design for the signs.
Not hearing any further discussion, could I have a motion on the petition?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the replacement signs and the proposed sign at the Recreation Center. And all of these are to be modeled after the existing sign system as shown in front of City Hall, to be used as a model.
Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Any other discussion on the motion?
Good.
Just that we make sure that landscaping is, additional landscaping in front of the signs is covered.
Yes. So additional
I'd be
landscaping.
happy to add that to the.
Okay. I'd like to make an addition to that as well, or clarification. Staff recommendation also reflects Megan's comment that progressive signs should be limited to use by the school district 2 times per year. I'd like to be certain that that's included as a part of the motion.
Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll take the motion to a vote. All those in favor of the motion on the table, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Congratulations. Thank you. I think we're all eager to see those 2 signs be replaced and are excited about the prospect of the new ones. Thank you, Megan. The next agenda item is the opportunity for public to address the board on any other non-agenda items. And seeing no one rushing immediately to the microphone, I'll ask Kathy or Megan for any other additional input or information from staff.
I would just add that it looks like we probably will have a March meeting. I think we were thinking we didn't have any items, but with your continuance, we will expect to have a March meeting, but we will be in touch with you.
Okay.
It depends on how hard they choose to work.
Great. Okay. All right. Having no other items on the agenda, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Our meeting is adjourned at 8:29. Thank you.
Wasn't the fellow that